we completely turn the page on the regular season, we are moving on. For anyone out there worried about where this content is going, we will not be stretching out exit interviews for weeks on end.
I personally would argue, as someone who covers the team, I don't feel like the season is over until exit interviews are done and until we get the final interview with the GM and the coach. And those 2 interviews are tomorrow. So in my mind, like, I am still very much in regular season mode today. I will not breathe a sigh of relief of, oh, it's the off season, until I file my final story tomorrow on the Briere Torts interviews, because that has always, to me, felt like the true end of the season.
I think tomorrow's the epilogue.
That's
the one at the end, right?
The epilogue.
Last day of school for Charlie.
Yeah.
I hope it's
the
not
prologue, the beginning.
the prologue is the epilogue.
Yeah,
I hope it's not as long as the end of the Return of the King, Lord of the Rings movie, because that epilogue was like an hour.
Even the fucking trees in that movie walked. But before we turn the page on exit interviews, I do want to go back to yesterday for a couple of things. Charlie wanted to have a clip of Sean Couturier talking about his relationship with John Tortorella. He ended up summarizing it. I just think to get the full scope, we should play the clip so it's like we're not starting any sort of crazy, like Charlie isn't misquoted or something.
No.
I just wanted to clean that up from yesterday. So it does seem like you can judge for yourselves, but I don't think you misrepresented the quote in any way, Charlie.
I'm glad you see where I was coming from.
Just in terms of Coots on his relationship with Torts, but we're going to play that for you now and see what you think.
We've agreed on some things and disagreed on other. Like I said, we don't have to agree on everything, but as long as we work together and push for the same goal, that's all that matters. So that's I think that's the kind of relationship we have.
Yeah. So the way I described it in my story was, he doesn't seem to be describing a bond as much as coexistence, at least where they're at right now. I don't think that is the worst thing. No. I don't suspect that Couturier is going to be engineering a mutiny against John Tortorella, but that quote does not speak to a strong rapport between captain and head coach, at least in my opinion.
And I kind of get the vibe from Couturier that he would never be the guy to organize a mutiny. Like, he just doesn't seem like that.
I think he's too professional.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I could see other players observing
on his
this
behalf.
relationship, and then they just independently of anything Couturier says to them, forming their own opinion of John Tortorella that they don't really like.
I will say, like, Couturier, that's Couturier's tone, like, almost every time I've heard him talk.
To be sure.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, like, try to interpret his tone. I will say, during the season, when these things were happening, he seemed like had a, like, pissier tone, and this one was more just like, listen, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We'll make it work.
Yeah.
Like, and, like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The season's over now.
Yeah,
and
what
like,
are you going to do?
Then it was like, yeah, I'm healthy. We'll see what the lineup is.
Yeah.
That was the
I don't
best
know
one.
why I'm being benched, actually.
I like that one a lot.
Like, but this was more. I don't want to say he was being unprofessional before. He was just telling you what he thought.
Yeah.
But this was a more professional tone.
I guess where I'm at is that I don't think this is necessarily a terrible thing if Couturier and Torts don't completely see eye to eye, if their relationship isn't that of, for example, Nick Foligno was Tortorella's captain in Columbus, and those two were like joined at the hip. Like, Foligno was an extension of John Tortorella. I do not get the sense that right now Sean Couturier is anywhere near an extension of John Tortorella. I'm curious to see where this goes, because I said this in the press conference, I asked this to Couturier about this, comparing it to the Travis Sanheim situation, where Travis Sanheim and Torts obviously butted heads at the end of last year with the scratch, and the team kind of advocating on Sanheim's behalf that this was bullshit what you did, John. Sanheim and Tortorella had conversations in the offseason. They kind of, cleared the air, got past it. Sanheim enters this season. He's playing the right side. He's getting heavy minutes. He gets off to that incredible start. Mm-hmm. And even when his play dipped a bit in the second half, which it did, it absolutely did, John Tortorella still was nothing but complimentary towards Sanheim all year. I think that could happen, but with Couturier, but something has to be done to change the relationship because right now they're not there yet.
Coots has to challenge him to a fight.
Right. That's obviously the answer. I also think too, and this was the other thing that did strike me as telling from the exit interviews by what it didn't say and what this person didn't say. So Kevin Kurz, who was diving in, I think this was one of the angles he was taking with his exit interview story, which is why he asked a lot of questions about this. He asked Scott Lawton, who before February was the only guy on the team with a letter. He's very clearly one of the team's big leaders. I think it's probably the two biggest leaders in this team are Sean Couturier and Scott Lawton. I think that is probably fair to say.
Yeah.
Lawton was asked by Kevin, essentially, do you think that the Couturier scratching, was a distraction? And also, like, what do you guys, do you think that contributed to how the end of the season played out? And it was notable to me that Lawton didn't outright say, no, it didn't have an impact. Like Lawton's answer was, yeah, it's tough. It's tough when your captain gets scratched. He's a leader of your team. You want him out there in key situations. And then he more or less said, look, it's our job to get past distractions. But he didn't shoot down the idea that like the team wasn't happy about it. And I thought that was notable because he could have been like, that was a media created thing. We just, we had blinders on. Obviously we support Sean. He's our captain, but it didn't affect us. Whereas instead Lawton, given the opportunity to say that, was like, nah, we wanted our captain out there.
Yeah. And everyone was speculated about that given the timing of the collapse.
I thought it was noteworthy by omission.
Yeah, I agree.
And this tells me, because remember, in those 2 games, they got 3 out of 4 points. Yeah. But this tells me after, like, the team responded, because I said it, this isn't just scratching Sean Couturier. When you scratch the captain, who is the representative of the team, you are sending a message to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, one, y'all are fucking up. This is how bad things are. Like, I am doing this now. This tells me, like, there wasn't a conversation after. Like, we responded, we did our part. Mm-hmm. And then this was clearly a thing that we got asked questions about. And then there was no, okay, listen, guys, we're through that now. Like it doesn't seem like there was, and maybe that wouldn't happen with any coach.
I don't think there was any resolution. Yeah. That said, I don't think John Tortorella feels like there needed to be.
And that's John Tortorella. Yeah, absolutely.
This was always my concern about the captain, about the scratching of the captain thing. Number one, my concern was what's the reaction going to be in the short term? John Tortorella undeniably, at least for those 3 or 4 games, got the reaction he wanted in the short term. He jolted the team. They started playing better. Then obviously they go into the 8-game losing streak, but they got that initial jolt. My other concern was what could be the long-term effects of this. And I'm not saying that they will definitely be bad. There could be a resolution between the two, Tortorella and Couturier in the offseason. It could be a Sanheim situation redux. That's possible. But as I said from the get-go, you're running the risk of creating a toxic relationship between the coach and the captain. And given the importance of the captain in terms of being, like, I've heard this described by many people that played in the NHL, that the captain is the conduit between the coach and the rest of the team. And if the conduit between the coach and the rest of the team doesn't particularly care for the coach, like, that could create problems down the road. We will see if it does. It's just something that, like, we should keep an eye on, because I don't think this is over in terms of what impact it could have long-term on Tortorella's relationship with the group. That's just my opinion.
That's, like, I look back to the Kevin Hayes situation, and it's not even an issue. Like, he couldn't be here anymore, and it's because Kevin Hayes can't or won't play John Tortorella's hockey. Whatever he was asking him to do, not going to happen. But that wasn't even the most toxic part of the issue. It was that Kevin Hayes is also a player with immense influence in the locker room.
Yeah.
And around the league, for that matter.
And around the league. Everyone likes Kevin Hayes. Yeah. Everyone likes the Hayes family. Like, everyone's friends with his dad, I see this could play out a certain way, similar to that, but I don't think it has to. Like, I do think there can be resolution to this.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about this still if they don't go on the 8-game losing streak.
100%. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
If they just played normally.
Well, we'd be talking about the playoffs right now. If they don't go
Yeah.
on the game losing
Like if they
streak.
just go 500 or like
Yeah.
Right.
just go 2-6.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
2-5-1.
Yeah, they
Like,
get-
we're not talking. We're
Yeah.
talking about the world
No.
here.
They get a couple wins against the bad teams.
They
They're
go-
in the playoffs right now.
They
They
go
are.
2-5-1 in that stretch. They're in the playoffs
Yeah.
by a couple of points.
Yeah.
God, that's
You're
so
not wrong.
depressing.
It's wild.
We all silly like the mayor.